Good morning. Welcome to the people who are actually sitting live in the sanctuary. Yay. And to those of you who are at home, either on YouTube or Facebook. It's good to be together. My name is Reverend Jean Rowe, and this week marks the 40th anniversary of my ordination and my 80th birthday, which is Thursday. And just for those of you who don't know me, I served churches in Cambridge, Mass., Concord, New Hampshire, Little Rock, Arkansas, Memphis, Tennessee, and then after I retired here 15 years ago, I did do some contract preaching for Franklin and Tryon, Unitarian Universalist churches. So I say to you all, welcome to this sacred place, this special time, this community made holy by our presence and our commitment to justice. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County virtual and live service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your sexual orientation or gender identity, however you vote, whatever your age, class, physical or intellectual ability, you are welcome here. This is a welcoming congregation, a safe place, a home for hope, a dwelling place of the holy. We come together each week to root ourselves in the saving message of this faith, that each and every person is important, that we each belong to an interdependent web which is holding us in love and calling us towards compassion and courage, justice and transformation. It is so good to be together. And now we will have a musical call to worship. We shall overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall
There are some announcements, which I was supposed to do before the singing. Every Tuesday at from 11:30 to 1, you're invited to join other members of the congregation and friends at Fellowship on the Green. Bring a lunch and join us in the picnic area every Tuesday, except if it rains, and then come on Thursday. No Thursday? No Thursday. In 2015, there were assassinations, murders, at the African Methodist Church in Charleston, and our community has decided there needs to be a commemoration of that, and it will be this Thursday, June 17th at 11 a.m. at the Church of the Good Shepherd Lutheran. You will see, those of you who are sitting here in the audience, you will see a clipboard on your row. Would you please sign your name so we know who was here? Thank you. The opening words were written by Richard Gilbert, a longtime Unitarian minister who served church, First Unitarian Church in Rochester, New York, for a long time. The human race is a vast rainbow, white, black, red, yellow, and brown, bursting into view, yet for all, blood is red, sky is blue, the earth brown, the night dark. In size and shape, we are a varied pattern of tall and short, slim and stout, elegant and plain. Yet for all, there are fingers to touch, hearts to break, eyes to cry, ears to hear, mouths to speak. In tongue, we are a tower of Babel, a great jumble of voices grasping for words, groping for ways to say love, peace, pity, and hope. Faiths compete, claiming the one way. Saviors abound, pointing to salvation. Not all can be right, not one. We are united only by our urge to search. Boundaries divide us, lines drawn to mark our diversity, maps charted to separate the human race from itself. Yet a mother's grief, a father's love, a child's happy cry, a musician's sound, an artist's stroke, batter the boundaries and shatter the walls. Strength and weakness, arrogance and humility, confidence and fear live together in each one, reminding us that we share a common humanity. We are all more human than otherwise. And now I will light the chalice with these words. In the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, we gather this day. May the flame we now kindle be to us a symbol of the holiness and wholeness we seek. And now there will be the singing of a hymn, but I am told to ask the people in the sanctuary not to sing.
How can we not sing? One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us and everyone. We'll take one more step. One more
Now is the time in our coming together when we light candles for sorrows and for joy. Joanna Bliss is going to light the candles while I do the talking. The first candle is for those who are in grief, either for the loss of a loved one, a lost pet, or someone is dying and you are keeping vigil. That is the first candle for grief. May you be healed. The second candle is for those leaders of nations. May you find your leadership serving the people rather than yourself. The third candle is for joy, all the joys that have happened in the recent times or about to happen, including birthdays and anniversaries. The next candle is for those who are going through difficult times, and I will name Tara MacDonald as one of those who is going through, as she puts it, a bumpy time. And finally, this candle for all other joys and sorrows, spoken and unspoken, that you hold in your hearts and that we may share. Thank you, Joanna. Let us take a time of meditation. The words are by Martin Luther King Jr., and you will know them. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith with which I return. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood and sisterhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring." And now let there be silence for the meditations of your own hearts. Amen. Well, we are about to have a total and complete treat. It is a beautiful setting of the song Blackbird.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to be free. Oh, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Ding ding da 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 ding ding da 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 ding ding da da ding ding da da ding ding da Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly for your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arrive. Oh, you were only waiting for this moment to arrive. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Into the light of the dark black night. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. You were only waiting for this moment to arrive. Singing in the dead, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Arise.
Was that not special? My reading today is really a very secular one. It's from Leonard Pitts, at our house, we love Leonard Pitts. And this was from May 18th. It was in the Asheville Citizen-Times. And it was entitled, "Sometimes You Wonder What They're So Afraid Of." Leonard Pitts. For the record, I consider myself pretty well informed about Black history. But it is not lost on me that most of what I know was learned on my own after my formal education ended, that I somehow managed to graduate an elite private university knowing next to nothing about Black history. Even at that, I was more fortunate than some. School only left me uneducated. It left them, meaning us white people, it left them miseducated. That is, taught things that were not true. In an inspired feat of enterprise journalism, Michael Harriot of The Root recently dug up the high school history textbooks that would have been used by many of those who seek to deny the reality of systemic racism or seek to restrict the teaching thereof. For instance, Harriot reports that South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham likely read in The History of South Carolina by Mary Sims Oliphant how, quote, most masters treated their slaves kindly. Africans were brought from a worse life to a better one. Meantime, Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn, a Mississippi native, would have read John K. Bettersworth's Mississippi, a History, based on United Daughters of the Confederacy propaganda that held Africans to be so lazy that it took two to help, one to do nothing. And when the norm is to be taught little or to be taught lies, we shouldn't wonder that people seeing a recreation of the 1921 Tulsa massacre on HBO's Watchmen and ask why they never knew this happened. or that a white guy on Twitter demands to know how African Americans can still live circumscribed lives given they've been free for 150 years. They, white people, are ignorant because the powers that be have conspired to protect white people and prevent black ones from knowing too much about a story that embarrasses our national ideal. On the 100th anniversary of the massacre of black people and destroying of their homes and businesses in Tulsa, the Reverend William Barber, one of my great heroes, said, "You can kill the people, but you cannot kill the voice of the blood. You can kill the people, but you cannot kill the voice of the blood." Oh, we can name names that are written in black blood, captured Africans dying in the holds of slave ships, slaves beaten, hanged, or burned to death, Jim Crow atrocities, like the Tulsa Massacre, which include lynchings, burnings, confiscations of land, and then the murders of black people in my 80-year lifetime. Emmett Till, Medgar Evers, he was killed, well, yesterday was the anniversary of his death. Martin Luther King Jr., and more recently Dante Wright, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Stephen Clark, Philando Castile, Eric Garner, and the 12-year-old Tamir Rice, who was playing with a toy gun. These are but a few. You know them too. Their disembodied spirits linger among us. That's why we cannot kill the blood. I'm not going to continue the death recital. You know what's been going on since the first settlers arrived on these shores in 1619. We may not think of them often, but they are with us in spirit. Their black lives mattered. As Unitarian Universalists, the first principle of our covenant is to promote the worth and dignity of all people, all people. All lives matter, sure, but that's not the point of the Black Lives Matter movement. It's to put in front of our attention the fact that black lives matter like other lives matter. No, I am not going to dwell on the history of violence and discrimination and cruelty towards black and brown people in this country. What I am going to do is what we Unitarian Universalist ministers call an odyssey. At our ministerial retreats, we elect one or two from among us to do a life review we call an odyssey. Most tend to be the story of one's spiritual or faith journey, how I came to believe such and such. Last month, I heard one at our retired ministers conference on Zoom that was more of a cultural or familial odyssey. The minister recounted the things in her family, educational and travel life that shaped who she was, why she believed as she did, and how that shaped the causes of her ministry. So today, in honor of my 80th birthday this week, I will share my racism, white privilege journey and what I have learned along the way that I want to pass on to you. In addition, I will raise questions to myself and to you, of course, questions that have been raised by a woman named Layla Saad, S-A-A-D. She is a black Muslim woman who grew up in Wales and Swindon, England, and Qatar, where she still lives and speaks to a global audience. Actually, she travels the world leading seminars and retreats. Her parents are from Zanzibar and Kenya, but they had moved to Great Britain before later moving to Qatar. She says that it was a difficult childhood out in the world as she and her brothers were the only black kids in their schools. At home, there was love, support, and encouragement, but out there, she encountered white privilege and subtle racism. She says, those indirect messages from being treated slightly differently by school teachers to hardly ever seeing fictional characters or media representations that looked like me, to understand that I would have to work a lot harder than my white peers to be treated the same. To always understand that my particular needs were always an afterthought, it taught me this. Black girls like me did not matter in a white world. I will spend the rest of my life tearing down this picture and painting a new one that reflects the truth. Black girls matter everywhere. So she's written a book. She's written a book, and it's full of questions for us. My parents and their grandparents, that many generations, all lived in a small town in rural Illinois, not far from the Wabash River, surrounded by acres and acres of corn, soybeans, cattle, and hogs. Some lucky farmers were blessed to have a lot of oil found on their farms, and some of them got rich. A Marathon refinery was built 9 miles away in the county seat of Robinson. This village of my ancestors, of 1,500 souls, was also lily white. Now, my family spent several weeks every summer visiting relatives back in Illinois. Oh yeah, you'll probably be amused to learn that the name of the town is Oblong. And that is better than the original name, which was Henpeck. Nobody tried to massacre the citizens of Oblong, Illinois. There was no violence in the streets, unless you call it violent the way the teenage boys raced through town in their trucks as fast as they could, mufflers absent and screeching tires. My grandmother called them cowboys, as the noise was awful to her ears. After college, my dad got an accountancy job at Kodak, and thus I didn't grow up in Oblong, but in Arundecoit, New York, a suburb of Rochester on Lake Ontario. It too was lily white. There were no black kids in our public schools. I met black kids at YWCA day camp and YWCA swimming lessons and Girl Scout overnight camp, girls from the city of Rochester. I have to admit I liked the mocha color of their skin and the way they moved with a certain grace and fluidity. My college class at Tufts University, outside Boston, had one black woman student. She was very pale. And one black male student. He was very handsome. My freshman advisor was a black man named Bernard Harleston. He was kind, thoughtful, and brilliant. Tufts University was founded by Universalists in 1853 and was considered very liberal. There was a Universalist theological school on campus while I was there, but it closed 5 years later, after I graduated in 1963. The whole university was very white back then. Not so much today. There's way more diversity today. I tell you this because my earliest experiences were pretty much exclusively white culture. We didn't think of it as white privilege, of course. It was just normalcy for us. In July 1963, newly graduated with a degree in political science, I moved to Washington, D.C., and became a computer systems analyst for the Federal Aviation Agency, now the Federal Aviation Administration. I rode the bus to work. Now I was living among black people. And suddenly one day in August, I woke up to the fact of white privilege and black suffering. The government agencies let us take the day off so we could participate in Dr. King's March on Washington. I was with my white buddies from the FAA, but surrounded by black people. I spent the day listening to the people around me in the crowds and the speeches, especially Dr. King's. After that day, I began listening more to what Black people were saying. It seemed a natural thing to do. My education in white privilege was just beginning. 5 years later, in 1968, Martin Luther King Jr., Ralph Abernathy, and 98 others brought the Poor People's Campaign to Washington. And by the way, Lackey Rowe, my husband, was the lawyer for the Poor People's Campaign. So he was in Washington then, but of course I did not know him. The poor people came in covered wagons, pony carts, tractors, and old cars and trucks. They set up a tent encampment named Resurrection City. They held rallies and marches and classes. They lobbied Congress and made speeches on national television. My part in this was putting together toiletry kits in shoeboxes, a project of my Unitarian church in Arlington, Virginia. When the campaign ended, I was part of an interracial action group that grew out of it. We met at a Black church downtown in Washington. The first thing I learned was, shut up, listen. You educated white liberals are used to being in charge, but here you are not. We, the Black people, are in charge, and we will tell you what is to be done. And the first thing you can do is listen, and the second thing is to bring us food for our food bank in our local neighborhood and in the poorer parts of Washington. And so, 18-month-old baby Mike in tow and pregnant with Ken, I drove to the inner city once every 2 weeks with food collected at our church, until my husband told me, no more. He was worried for my and Mike's safety in the poor neighborhoods of D.C. And I didn't fight for the right to continue food deliveries. Anyway, my second pregnancy was advancing and I was tired. And now I can hear Layla Saad asking me, did you do all you could do? Did you go to bat for us if you were one of us, as if you were one of us? The answer, privileged that I am, was no. No, I did not. 10 years later, we were living in a Boston suburb. I was working as a Unitarian Universalist religious educator, first in Andover, Massachusetts, and then in Cambridge. And I was enrolled at Andover Newton Theological School. During the 4 years I was there, I was in classes with increasing numbers of Black students, and during retreats and seminars among Unitarian Universalist seminarians, we were getting anti-racism training. I was waking up a little. In theology classes, the most current theology was liberation theology, reality as seen through the eyes of the oppressed, people of color, the poor, women, gay people. According to the liberation theologians, these were the people who were closer to the true understanding of the liberating message of Jesus. They were the real Christians, not white privileged people. And I learned that my actual core belief was virtually the same as Martin Luther King Jr.'s. At the core of the universe is a force we call God, is synonymous with the power of love. Love redeems and love saves. Love is the heart of the matter. But what really got my attention was my first preaching teacher, a tall, handsome, Black Unitarian Universalist minister. He was charismatic and beautiful, and I had a big crush on him. He had a beautiful voice and used it well. And he was striking in his leisure suits. This is the late 70s. In his leisure suits and his fluid posture, he was just so beautiful to watch. Now Layla Saad's voice is in my head. She asked, have you fetishized Black men? Have you desired affinity with or approval from Black men in order to feel more woke? Yes, probably. I wanted to be an anti-racist. I was drawn to beautiful black men, especially one who was a minister and a great preacher like I aspired to be. Layla is a lot blunter, she says. That quickening of your heartbeat when you see black men caused by your fears, that excited fetishizing of black men as sexual conquests, that note of surprise when black men are tender and multidimensional with their emotions, and all those ideas you have about black men that negatively differentiate them from white men are clear signs that you harbor anti-blackness against black men. Dig it out today and get to the core of it so you can stop trapping black men in a white supremacy story of your own making. Anti-black men? Me? But I really, really liked him. After my ordination 40 years ago this week, I continued as a religious educator in Cambridge for another year while I was in search for a church of my own. I spent 5 months as an interim minister in Lillywhite, Concord, New Hampshire, and then I was called to the UU Church in Little Rock, Arkansas. What a transition from living in New England. Fresh out of school and emboldened to preach social justice, I probably overdid it on women's equality issues, a really hot topic in 1983. Actually, I was criticized several times. Don't you ever talk about anything besides women's liberation? But I also talked about abortion rights and racism, and within a few years, advocacy and ministry to people dying of AIDS. I did my first ceremony of Holy Union for gay couples in 1985, marched in rallies for abortion rights with my NARAL sign, and spoke out against racism. I did a sermon about racism in the mid-'80s and began receiving hate mail. Who are you to come down from the north and preach to us about racism? What do you know anyway? Well, I was full of energy and a know a lot. Not know it all, but know a lot, from all the anti-racism training the Unitarian Universalist Association had thrown at us seminarians, and I thought I knew a thing or two. I was an active part of an anti-racism interfaith clergy group, too. One day, this group had an important visitor. It was Jesse Jackson, and I got to sit next to him in the meeting. Before he left, he kissed me on the cheek. I was thrilled, and I told a number of people about that kiss. To my dismay, I soon read an article that said Jesse Jackson loved to kiss women, especially older women. I was deflated. Well, you know, I was only maybe 44, so I wasn't real old. In July 1992, I left Little Rock to become a new congregation minister for a church that had been founded in January of that year in Memphis. I had actually been the guest preacher for their first Sunday. It was a deliberate new start, sponsored by the Downtown Church of the River on the banks of the Mississippi. Our new congregation was named Neshoba Unitarian Universalist Church, Neshoba. Neshoba. The name came from Neshoba Plantation, an experimental project of Frances Wright, a Scotswoman, to educate and emancipate black slaves and free them to Haiti or Liberia. The story goes that it thrived for a while, but was undone by free love and financial corruption. However, before it was all over, Frances Wright did hire a ship and sent freed slaves to Haiti. In Memphis, I was active in the Memphis Ministers Association and its president one year. We were a deliberately interracial group and co-sponsored the 35th anniversary of Dr. King's famous mountaintop speech at Mason Temple the night before he was murdered. Men who had been there that night in 1968 assembled again, including Jesse Jackson. This time around, I was never close enough to get a kiss. But I was among a few Memphis clergy who formally welcomed him and other dignitaries and helped to host anti-racism workshops over the next several days. At that point, I was vice president of Memphis Ministers Association, and the president was out of town, so I got to do some greeting. I also collaborated with a black woman minister of an AME church, African Methodist Episcopal, to host some joint activities, but we really didn't succeed in doing very much, mainly because it was more my agenda than hers, and although she didn't say it, she knew that her church really wasn't interested in helping a white church deal with its own racism. What worked better is if we white folks attended events organized and led by black folks, like the commemoration of Martin Luther King's last speech, the mountaintop speech, which I excerpted this morning. I was better off in a supporting role. In recent years, Lackey and I tried to attend every speech or rally organized by North Carolina's Reverend William Barber. His is straight talk about poverty and racism. He and his co-leader, Liz Theo Harris, are leading a new Poor People's campaign, reminiscent of the one King led in 1968. But here's what I learned about racism and white supremacy in these past 80 years, and particularly in the 40 years since I've been ordained. Seek educational experiences. Read all you can about racism and Black history. Right now I'm reading the shocking and highly informative book by Isabel Wilkerson entitled Caste. And I could do 5 talks based on that book. It's really rich with information. Support Black causes and events. Show up at rallies and marches. Call out racist rhetoric when you hear it. Put yourself in Black people's shoes. And that leads me to a final observation. Recently, Lackey and I were discussing the demolition of the Vance Monument in Asheville, and we mused that it might be better to rededicate it to some aspect of Black history, say the fact that it is located where a slave market once was. And then I had a flash of insight. I'm not Black. What would I think if I were a Black woman? I'll bet I would think it was an abomination and tear it down. Last week I was at my doctor's office and told these thoughts to Wanda, the office nurse, who is Black. Without missing a beat, she said very quietly, "Tear it down." I thanked her because when it comes to racism and white privilege, I've got a lot to learn. I suspect we all do, because we're white and the bearers of white privilege. Thank you for listening. Because we are a nonprofit organization, because we are covenanted to make the world a better place and to help one another in our faith journeys, we do need to take up an offering. For those of you at home, you can do it online at uutc.org. For those of you here in the sanctuary today, there are offering plates by the rear doors. And when we leave here today, we're going to leave through those doors and gather outside for fellowship. So give and give generously. This is a very worthy place to support. And now the benediction, and during the music following, I will invite you to leave through those doors. May we be bearers of light, light amidst the surrounding darkness. May we reach out to others with generosity and loving care, showing them the larger the larger side of ourselves. May we reveal to those closest to us some of the wonder and beauty of our own existence. And may we find within ourselves together the courage and determination to be that which we profess and which we say we believe. The freedom to become that which we ought to become. May we be bearers of light amidst the surrounding darkness. So may it be. Amen. Go in peace.